Analytical psychology is a branch of psychology that was founded by Carl Jung. It focuses on the exploration of the psyche, or the unconscious mind. Analytical psychologists believe that the unconscious mind is responsible for our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. One of the most famous concepts in analytical psychology is the idea of the 12 Jungian archetypes. These are 12 universal symbols or motifs that occur in all cultures throughout history. Each archetype represents a different aspect of human nature. For example, the mother archetype represents nurturing and caregiving, while the warrior archetype represents courage and strength. Analytical psychologists often use these archetypes to help their patients understand themselves better. By understanding which archetypes they identify with, people can gain insight into their own behavior and motivations. If you're interested in learning more about analytical psychology, or if you think you might benefit from its insights, be sure to consult with a qualified mental health professional. Analytical psychology can be a helpful tool for understanding yourself and your relationships with others. 12 Jungian archetypes. The self, the persona, the shadow, the anima animus, the mother, the father, the child, the trickster, the hero, the sage, the terrible mother witch, the devil temptress. These are all archetypal figures that appear in myths, stories, and dreams across cultures. Analytical psychology posits that these archetypes exist within each of us and influence our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. While we may not be consciously aware of them, they nonetheless have a powerful impact on our lives. Understanding the 12 Jungian archetypes can help us to better understand ourselves and the world around us. The self is the central archetype in analytical psychology. It represents the totality of the psyche and is the point at which all the archetypes come together. The self is often symbolized by a circle or mandala. The persona is the mask that we wear to present ourselves to the world. It is our public image and can be very different from our true selves. The persona can be helpful in social situations, but it can also prevent us from being our authentic selves. The shadow is the dark side of the psyche that we try to keep hidden. It contains all the aspects of ourselves that we are ashamed of or afraid to acknowledge. The shadow can be a source of great power, but it can also lead us into darkness and destructive behavior. The anima animus is the archetype of the opposite sex. It represents the feminine side of a man's psyche and the masculine side of a woman's psyche. The anima animus can be a source of great insight, but it can also lead to conflict and misunderstanding. The mother is the nurturing, caregiving archetype. She represents love, protection, and fertility. The mother can be a force for good, but she can also be overprotective and smothering. The father is the archetype of authority and fatherhood. He represents strength, wisdom, and power. The father can be a positive influence in our lives, but he can also be domineering and abusive. The child is the archetype of innocence and creativity. It represents new beginnings and potential. The child can be a source of great joy, but it can also be vulnerable and needy. The trickster is the archetype of chaos and mischief. It represents the disruptive force in our lives that can lead to growth or destruction. The trickster can be a fun-loving companion, but it can also be devious and dangerous. The hero is the archetype of courage and adventure. It represents the part of us that wants to save the world or conquer our fears. The hero can be a positive influence in our lives, but he can also be self-destructive and reckless. The sage is the archetype of knowledge and understanding. It represents the part of us that seeks wisdom and truth. The sage can be a great teacher, but he can also be aloof and detached. The terrible mother, which is the archetype of fear and evil. She represents the dark side of motherhood that can devour and destroy. The terrible mother, which can be a powerful force for good or evil in our lives. The devil temptress is the archetype of temptation and seduction. She represents the dark side of human nature that can lead us into sin and destruction. The devil temptress can be a source of great pleasure, but she can also be dangerous and addictive.